Hi Year 8, it's Mrs. Reed here and welcome to the final lesson this week where we are looking at the point of poetry. Today's lesson will be focused again on the poem Caged Bird. Okay, before we start, can I ask you please to make sure you've got everything you need for the lesson. That means you're going to need some paper or an exercise book to write in, a pen or pencil to write with, and you may wish to have a coloured pen or highlighter for self-marking and annotation. Make sure you're distraction-free and then we'll begin. Okay, so I'm going to start today's lesson a little bit differently and I want to share with you some examples of really excellent work. I've got work examples here from a range of different classes, not just from my class, and lots of teachers have been sharing with me the brilliant work that you do. So I want to say a big well done and just to share with you some lovely examples of high quality work. Okay, first up we have this beautiful piece. We can see it's really clearly laid out. Lots of effort gone into this, as well as using that grid to show your quotations, just as I asked. I'm really super impressed. I've got some more lovely examples where I can clearly see your thinking as you're going through the lesson. Nice use of a mind map, clear self-marking. This is a good example too. Neatly laid out, use of the grid, okay, and worked up until your 45-minute point. Good job. Oh, that was a little bit hidden there. Again, a really nice example where I could see that this person had worked through the starter activity, self-marked, that they had used, clearly laid out their quotations from the poem, as well as some nice detail in their analysis that really showed me a clear understanding of the meaning and message of the poem too. Another lovely example here. Look at that nice use of the title and the date, clearly self-marking all the way through and recording any different terminology and vocabulary as it comes up. This piece was very good, and this was an example of an extended piece of writing that was analysing the war poetry. Again, a really good example of somebody who's clearly able to articulate their understanding of the poem and zoom in on language. So good job. And another really lovely example. And quite often some of these are just one picture of a longer piece of work. So big thank you, Year 8. You're doing lovely, really lovely job. And I want to see this work continue to come in and meet those high standards and expectations. Well done. Okay, so what's today's lesson all about? Well, we have this big question to answer. We're asking, how does Angelou in the poem Caged Bird use language to present ideas about freedom and oppression? Now, we started to explore this poem a little bit yesterday, looking at the use of symbolism. And linking to that, we're going to further unpick how metaphor works in the poem, zoom in on some language and key quotations, and finish up with writing about our understanding of the poem using what, how, and why. So the first thing for us to do is to make sure we have recorded this key term. The word here is oppression. Now, you might have come across this before, you may already understand the word, or it might be entirely new to you. So we're going to go through a little process here of writing down, first of all, the word and its definition. So when we talk about oppression, it's a noun, it's used to describe the prolonged, so something that lasts a long time, so the cruel or unjust treatment of somebody or a group of people. Quite often, oppression is linked to the cruel treatment of people by those in positions of power and authority. So if you look at the words that it's linked to, we might link oppression to ideas of persecution, abuse, and tyranny. You might think about this linked to Animal Farm. I know a few classes had read that before. We went into lockdown. So that will link to some of the ideas that you will have explored in that novel. There's 2 examples at the bottom of the page. So you can see here, years of oppression had ground people down. So not being treated fairly and being treated cruelly had a really negative impact on their lives. The people had suffered months of political oppression. Okay, I'd like you to write down the word and definition now, please. Now you've done that, can you have a go at the task? The task is to rewrite this sentence to include the word oppression. Listen to the sentence first. He had lost all hope due to years of unjust treatment. Okay, can you see how that sentence doesn't include the word oppression at the moment? So you will need to rewrite it to include the word. Pause the video and do that now, please. Okay, so I want you just to check your answer here, check you've changed it correctly. He had lost all hope due to years of unjust treatment. Well, I'm going to highlight this. This bit could be removed from the sentence and it could be replaced with the word oppression instead. So the sentence now says, he had lost all hope due to years of oppression. Check your answer and correct it, please, if it's not right. Okay, so our next step is to link our understanding of the poem so far to some prior learning. Now, I know in Year 7, in your study of poetry, you investigated how metaphors work. So I'd like us to recap that piece of learning and apply it to this poem. Let's look at the 3 words on the screen. So they are vehicle, tenor, and ground. You might remember that in your Year 7 unit you explored these ideas, and they help us to be able to understand metaphorical and non-literal language. So the vehicle is the thing that you want to describe to your audience. The tenor is the imaginative idea that you compare it to. And the ground is what the tenor and the vehicle have in common with each other. Their common ground. So let's look at the examples at the bottom of the page. So if I wanted to use some figurative language, a simile, like this one, I could say, Achilles fought like a lion. Now, when I break that metaphor down, I have got 3 different parts. I've got firstly the tenor, so the thing that we want to describe here is Achilles. We have the vehicle, what we want to compare him to, which is a lion. And finally, the ground. What is it that links them? Well, we could say that both are strong, fierce, and brave. Okay, final recap. Let's look at the last example. Here we have a metaphor. Your room is a pigsty. So let's break it down. The tenor is your room, the thing we want to describe. The vehicle is a pigsty, the imaginative idea that we're comparing it to. And finally, the ground is what both the tenor and the vehicle have in common. So in this example, both are messy and smelly. Okay, if you want to recap those further, I would suggest pausing the video and writing a definition of each one now. So let's have a look at this in the poem. Right, so how does the use of an extended metaphor work here? Well, in this poem we have 2 big ideas that run through. These are freedom and oppression. In fact, yesterday we talked about it as freedom and imprisonment. So I want to know, if those are the vehicle, what would be the tenor? What are the symbols used in the poem to represent ideas of freedom and oppression? Can you copy down this table and fill in the vehicle and the tenor column, please? Do that now. Okay, so hopefully you would have recognised here that the tenor for freedom was the comparison to the free or the flying bird. And for oppression or imprisonment, it was the caged bird. Now have a go at the ground. What is it that links? What is the link between the two objects? So if freedom is linked to a flying bird, what's the common ground between them? Both are what? Pause the video and try and fill in that column. Now let's do the same for the second. So, if the idea being conveyed is imprisonment and oppression, and this is shown through a comparison to the caged bird, what is the ground? What is the link between them? Both are what? Pause the video and fill in that column. Okay, I'm going to go through these ideas now, so make sure you have a pen to hand or you might like to have a different colour pen to hand to mark your answer. Okay, so freedom in the poem is conveyed through a comparison to the free bird. In fact, Maya Angelou doesn't need to specifically say that this is a poem about freedom. She uses the bird as a symbol to represent that idea. So the free bird is linked to ideas of freedom because there is a ground between them. Both are able to live naturally, travel freely, make their own choices. Both might be linked to feelings of happiness and enjoyment. Okay, add to your grid if there's some ideas here that you haven't yet included. Right, next up, imprisonment and oppression. How are these things conveyed within the poem? Well, they are shown through the symbol of the caged bird. The ground between them is that both are unable to live freely. If you are oppressed, or if you are a caged bird, you are restricted, maybe feeling that you are being held captive and against your will. Both may long for freedom or to be treated fairly. Okay, so can you see how starting to unpick how metaphors work helps us to get a greater understanding of how this works throughout the poem? Right. Last lesson I asked you to identify 3 quotations for yourself. 3 that symbolised freedom and 3 that symbolised oppression or imprisonment. Hopefully you've got them to hand because you will be using them in today's lesson. Okay, so before I can go on to write about this poem, I have to investigate the language a little bit further. Now, I know that you guys can do this. You will have practiced this lots of times in English. So let's talk through one method of analysing language. I'm going to use my thinking hard task to investigate the 3 quotations I have chosen. I'm going to be looking at them and asking, what impression do I get? Which words are particularly important here? Are there any labels or word classes that I can apply, techniques or word classes that I can label? How might this relate to the idea and concept of freedom? Okay, I'm going to attempt this, guys. Let's see how it goes. Here we go. So, looking at my examples, first of all, what I'm going to do is, let's be able to draw on here for a minute. I'm going to look at this first one. So, leaps on the back of the wind. Okay, so let's highlight this word here, leaps. This is particularly interesting to me. I think this whole image is one of freedom, leaping on the back of the wind, enjoying being outdoors in the natural world. And I can certainly label here, can't I? So if I just put in a little box, okay, so leaps. Well, can you tell me what word class it is? Good, well done if you got that leaps is a verb. So a verb that suggests that you are moving freely. In fact, I might say leaps is like jumping. And it kind of conjures up to me an image of happiness and enjoyment. In fact, I might leap into the air with joy. Okay. So I think this is a particularly powerful example of freedom, of being able to do what I want to do, and you know, to move, physically move in a way that I choose to. And let's go a bit further then. If I look at the next one, I've got dares to claim the sky. Well, look at that word here again. I've got another really powerful verb. Okay, let's draw a little arrow down to here. And this time, to dare. Okay, so the verb to dare maybe means to what? To take a risk. Maybe to be brave or bold in my actions. Dare to claim the sky. So like they're claiming, taking possession over something and claiming it as their own. How does this link to ideas of freedom? Well, if you're not free, if you're being restricted and controlled, then you're not going to have these opportunities. You're not going to be able to like seize the moment, take a risk, and be daring. That won't be an option available to you. Okay, let's have a look at the next one then. Names the sky his own. Oh, okay. Well, another image here of confidence. If I am naming the sky, put a little box here. So another verb that conjures up to me impressions of confidence, of somebody who is able to name the sky his own, to take control or ownership and possession. Okay, now you can see here at this stage, these are just note forms. I'm trying to think about, well, how do these link to ideas of freedom? What words can I label? Okay, and in fact, I might go a little bit further. Let's see. I might even look at some of these words. I might look at the word wind here and both of these, the sky. So these are all natural images, aren't they? Natural images of the outdoors. So the free bird is associated with the natural world, being outside, being able to move freely, being able to take risks and behaving in a really confident and a way in which shows that they are in control. Okay. So I would like you to have a go at this. Now it's an annotating task, so you will need to have your quotations in front of you. And I want you to do the same thing as I have. This time you're going to take 3 different quotations. So your quotations might be ones that show ideas of oppression, the opposite idea to mine. Do the same thing. And I want you to spend no more than 5 minutes on this task. Okay, it's a 5-minute maximum. And I want you to pause the video and to do as I... Okay, good. So you might see here that, gosh, there's lots that you could zoom in on. Okay, you might have picked out, let's pick a couple of things that you may have discussed. Let's start with this one, stands on the grave of dreams. Well, this grave of dreams is a particularly sad image. It's definitely negative. In fact, the grave of dreams is non-literal. So we've got a metaphor here. You could explore the tenor and the vehicle and the ground. So to stand on the grave, well, grave we associate with death, something being killed, and of dreams. Well, dreams is talking about our kind of future hopes, our plans, maybe our opportunities. So this is like all of their future hopes and dreams are being killed off. They're being stopped and not allowed to continue. His wings are clipped. This is the image of the caged bird, isn't it? I think this verb is particularly powerful. If his wings have been clipped, this tells us that he is being restricted and stopped from being able to fly properly. So this seems particularly cruel and harsh on the caged bird, that they are not allowed the same things as the free bird and they are being kept in captivity. You might have also used the quotation, his feet are tied. Again, that image of being restricted and controlled and unable to move. Okay, let's look at the last one. The caged bird sings of freedom. Well, this tells us that they don't have freedom, okay, like the flying bird, but it's something that they can sing of. To sing, okay, that's something that we do for enjoyment. We sing because we're happy. We sing because we like music and we want to engage with it in some way. So this is quite a sad image of the bird. Its only means of escape is to sing of freedom and really hope for a better opportunity. So there's lots of things that you could have annotated here, but in doing so you will have engaged with some of the quotations and started to make a plan for writing. Okay, so let's link these ideas back to the context. We've been talking about how ideas of freedom and oppression are explored throughout the poem. So in this poem, Angelou describes the contrasting experience of two birds. One, we know, is able to live in nature and live as it pleases, while another bird, the caged bird, suffers in captivity. And it's due to the bird's suffering that the caged bird sings. It tries to cope with its circumstances and expresses its own longing for freedom. So this extended metaphor of the two birds helps Angelou to present ideas about oppression. She recognises that if you are free, you're privileged. And if you are oppressed, you are suffering and may need to show some kind of emotional resilience. Okay, let's have a look at the big question. Your response needs to contain 5 ideas. Step 1, we're going to give an overview of how the writer uses symbolism. Step 2, we'll be using some words from the text. Step 3, we'll give a very general explanation of what we can infer from a word or a phrase. Step 4 will be more specific, how the writer has chosen to use this word. And step 5 will give an explanation of why we think the writer may have chosen to do this. Let me model an example first. Okay, so let's get me out of the way. Angelou presents ideas about freedom through the symbol of the free bird. Okay, you can see in my first sentence I've used the writer's surname to start, and I've conveyed very clearly what it is I'm going to go on to analyse. Okay. Sentence 2. This is apparent when she uses the words leaps on the back of the wind. Okay, so here is where I embed in my sentence my choice of quotation that helps to evidence how the idea of freedom is shown in the poem. Next step. Now I need to make some inference. I need to clearly explain how I know this. So I'm going to use this phrase. This detail leads me to infer, as an introduction. This detail leads me to infer that the bird is flying and moving freely through the air. Okay, good. Even better if I can zoom in particular. Can I label a word class in this case? Yes, I can. So in particular, the verb leaps is significant because it suggests jumping and moving forward in a light-hearted or enjoyable way. Can you see how I've used my notes from my annotation task to help me to phrase this? Step 4. Now, I have decided here to add in a little bit more, to include, this is still step 3, to include another example to build on my analysis. So I've said that this is also evident in the phrase, dares to claim the sky, which creates the impression of confidence. The powerful verb dares suggests ideas of risk-taking and bravery. Okay, now I can go to step 4. Why do I think the writer has done this? Well, perhaps Angelou did this to suggest that those who live their lives free from oppression are liberated and able to enjoy their lives and embrace opportunities in a way that others cannot. Can you see here I've made a link between the idea in the poem and its context? Okay, I would like you to have a go at doing the same. In fact, I have provided you with a writing frame in order to be able to complete this task. I would like you to have a go at exploring how Angelou presents ideas about oppression through the symbol of the caged bird. I want you to zoom in on at least one quotation, and if you want to, you can use 2 or more to really develop your ideas. To complete this task, I would like you to make sure that you type it straight into our Teams quiz. Okay, this is an important detail because it means that your teacher can see your answer with the rest of the quiz. Okay, you may wish to write your answer first and then type it up, but you don't have to. You can type straight into the box on the quiz form. Here's your writing frame, and there's a PDF version of this attached to the lesson on Show My Homework. When you're finished, can I ask that you check that your response contains these 5 ideas? Okay, excellent work guys, and well done.